Welcome to Tulsa Titans, highlighting local professionals who are making a big impact. Today, I've got a good friend and a professional in the Oklahoma circuit, Jeff Frable with CCK Strategies. Jeff, how are you doing?
I'm good, Kellen, man. It's always good to spend time with you, my brother.
You too, man. So you're one of the partners at CCK, but you also run marathons. So, man, introduce yourself to get us started.
Well, I guess I'm a father. I guess at first, most high, I'm a believer. I'm a father, a husband, a son. But then we get into the professional aspect. So then I'm a CPA. Been a CPA for almost 30 years now. Been a partner at CCK for maybe close to 20. I've lost count the number of years. It's somewhere in the 18, maybe in the 18-year range. And that's where I landed. That's what I've been doing my whole life. And God has provided through that profession. And it's been a fun ride so far.
Well, man, almost yearly I attend some kind of local leadership group and they bring you into keynote. And I think it's awesome to hear a CPA that can actually communicate, keynote something. There's a lot of wisdom in that noggin. And so what I want to know with what's shifted here in Oklahoma, and then we've been through and we are still going through changing times. What have you recognized as more important? What are you consuming more of? And what are three things that you said, you know what, I'm not going to give my time to that anymore?
Wow, that's a deep question. Without a lot of preparation, I'm not sure I could answer that. Kellen, right now I'm going through a time, and I hope it's okay to be a little transparent with this podcast. Is that okay with you?
That's what we're here for.
So, I'm a 52-year-old professional, and I think for the most part, on the outside, I might look like I have it all together. I've been married. Monday we celebrate my 30-year wedding anniversary with my beautiful bride, Sherry. Have three amazing kids. Two of them are married. One of them is getting ready to graduate in another year and a half. Been a professional for 30 years here and have grown my practice. And so on the outside, it looks like you got it all together. But there's been some things I've been going through in the last couple of years related to just who I am as an individual, as a child of God, as a husband and a dad. And really, I think what I'm coming up with and what I'm learning is really some crazy stuff, Kellen. It's like my whole life has been performance-based. When you're a CPA and you build a book of business and you have clients and you have partners, and it's not just a sole proprietor thing. I mean, we've got over 120 people in our firm overall. So there's a performance-based metrics that you have to maintain and keep to do what you do. And I mean, I've been tracking every 15 minutes of my workday for 30 years. And it all goes into things like chargeable hours and realization and things of this nature that are all performance-based. And I'm coming to this conclusion right now about, what kind of impact has that had on me as an individual, as a man, as a believer? I mean, to me, everything is performance-based, and I'm in this process of trying to learn that God loves me for who I am. And I can't do anything to make it any better because his love is just so perfect. And so one of the things that's in this process, I'm reading this book, The Search for Significance, and going through it with a good friend. And there's just several different things that are coming up in this book that I've known my whole life. I mean, just the general easy concept, basic concept that God loves me. Well, what does that really mean? And does he really love me in spite of who I am, in spite of my failures? And what does that mean to us as, having that relationship, and as it relates to who I am and how I treat my day and go about my day and how I interact with people? It's not like it's challenging my faith, but there's things in it that I'm learning that I'm like, I've always known that, but do you really believe that? And do you really live that? And if you do, what impact does that have on your life as a day-to-day professional and as a day-to-day believer?
That's deep too. So you and I kind of talked about this. I've gone through a shift and kind of the same realization of, man, how much of what I do is attached to the fact that I have to perform.
Mm-hmm.
not just doing something with excellence, because there's a difference.
Right.
Having clarity on something and knowing that it's going to do well. But, this last season, as far as like taking things away, I've been writing stuff down and be like, why do I do that?
Right.
That's not a high level thing, and I can give it away, and I'm smart enough and got enough wisdom in business to give it away. But now that I've given it away, why do I feel anxious?
Yeah.
Why do I still want to do it? Because that shouldn't be a part of me, right? And that's tied to that performance mindset. And so this is so powerful for men, just identity. And when we get misplaced identity, and we talked about this morning, crazy enough, in a mastermind group with Mark Delaney.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens if identity and purpose are just in the career or the activities we do? What does that do to you? And I think that's kind of what you're unpacking. So what have you learned so far?
I guess I've learned that I don't have it all together. I've always known that I don't control. I mean, it's kind of hard to unpack, but I think a lot of this started with the pandemic, and I hate to kind of blame that, but there were some things that were going on during that period of time that just kind of initiated some of these thoughts. And I was telling someone this morning that, I rarely used the term anxiety until a couple of years ago. And there is a constant flow of anxiety it's an undercurrent with what I'm doing right now. And I don't know where it's coming from. Well, let me put it this way. I know where it comes from. I know it's the enemy. My question is really, why are these things going on now? And what's the journey that God is really trying to put me on? What's he trying to teach me? Because really, at the end of the day, it's all about him. And so when there's times that I feel like he's being silent and not answering me, I kind of have to question, why is that? What are you trying to accomplish? And so there's just these things I've experienced in the last couple of years that were never really part of my vernacular before, never part of my conversation. And maybe it's one thing has stacked up on top of another, and I've always been able to deal with it, but something has kind of, tripped that in the last couple of years. But just trying to learn to depend on him more and more on his timing, because again, it goes back to, I think we all learned in the last couple of years that we don't control anything, and we think we do, but the more we think we control it, the worse we respond. And then it's funny, because when we lose control and then we gain a little bit of it back, we just want to take more and more of it back. And I just have kind of had to learn that I don't control anything, and I'm still working on that, still learning. So it's kind of a work in process, but that loss of control and trying to control everything is really a huge lesson, I think, that I'm learning right now.
Yeah, I gave over, since you went there, I gave over some roles in the men's ministry and at work. And here's how I knew I had a problem. I gave the roles over, and I knew the gifts and talents that I had in the roles, and I saw the things to be learned from the people I turned things over to. Just crazy skill sets, crazy gifts and talents. They just don't have a season. And so, Jeff, I could have told you exactly where the bumps in the road for them were going to come. They call it failure, but it's just growth. It's self-realization that you push through. Men, we have the right answer for this stuff, supposedly, right?
Right.
What happened with me was, a counselor or professional couldn't come in and roadmap it, because I already did. Is as they started hitting those valleys when I turned things over, I became anxious. So listen to this, I mentally mapped something out, and it's going exactly according to plan, and I'm emotionally distraught.
You're still anxious. Yeah.
Still anxious. And it started for me, some of this COVID stuff too, shaking things up. And I think it's a beautiful thing, actually, because how long could we have been lost as men trying to perform and control things without truth, right? And I think with the freedom that you and I will get on the back end of this, God's got so much more for us. And we can't live with that anxiousness that was welling up with the path that he has for us. So I think it is a very rough thing, but a very beautiful thing. And I want to tee this up as the next question, because it's so important. And if you're 20 or 21, this is gold. We finally got hit with something we couldn't control. The wisdom we had wouldn't do anything about it. I mean, we're out of our comfort zone, and we don't have any answers, right? So you reached out to who for help?
I reached out to a counselor, ultimately. My wife had had enough of me. She's like, I mean, when you're going through stuff like that and you're tired and you don't have anything to give, and your spouse is tired and she doesn't have anything to give, it's kind of a lonely place, because you're both kind of saying, hey, I know we got to do this together, but I'm struggling too, and you just don't have anything. So I started reaching out from a counseling perspective, and had actually, I feel like a really good source. But it was because my one of my daughters was going through counseling, and we were with this group, and it was a fantastic group, but I had to pay for the service. If I joked with my wife about changing churches so that we could get some free service, especially during the pandemic. I mean, just say you're going,
now you're being a CPA. Now you let the whole world know you're a CPA.
Yeah, but I told him, I said, I gotta find a little bit more, for paying for my daughter's counseling. I needed to find something a little bit more economically feasible on my end. And it really kind of turned into finding something that was on our insurance plan. And really, I'm a huge believer, Kellen, in that God connects the dots, and that, you believe that. And so the person that connected me with the individual I'm with now, I've known for many years. And I just kind of in a discussion said, hey, do you know anybody that might be on my plan? And he's like, yeah, I do. And he gave me a name, and sure enough, he was on my plan. And not only that, but he's a born again believer. He's an ORU grad. And I mean, I didn't have to have that spiritual side to the counseling, but boy, it just opened it up significantly to be able to share really where those struggles are, and not just have someone kind of give me the technical response, but kind of bring in God's way and God's plan into all that as well. But I'll tell you the truth. I mean, I'm going to be 53 in October. Most of my adult life, I thought counseling is for wimps. I mean, I thought it was, you're weak. You're weak if you have to go to a counselor. And it started with some of the things my daughter was experiencing, and it transitioned into me. It changed my thought process completely, that, if you're struggling, you really should reach out with someone that gets you, and someone that understands you, and someone that can help you through those times. And it doesn't have to be a 5-10 year engagement. It can be, a few months at a time, or maybe a year or something like that. But it can be kind of rocky. And sometimes you need someone beyond just your friend group, someone with some professional knowledge to help you through some of those issues and times.
Yeah, culture's funny. And so you hit on two really powerful things there. One is, men, we've got to ask for help. We can't know it all, and when we try to control and know it all, I mean, we're just going to spiral out. Yeah. But the second thing is, like, okay, so all the tax bills and everything change. COVID hit. I have a business, men's ministry. I need Jeff Frable, right? I need, like, somebody spent their entire career studying tax and the law behind it and how to write things off. I don't know those things. I can't figure those things out in a month on my own. I've got to reach out for help. So culture says that's okay. But culture says for our marriages and for ourselves, we have to hit crisis before we go find people that have spent their entire lives, and their purpose is to understand how our emotions and our minds work and how marriage works. And so the two most powerful things I've done in the last 3 years, one, I got on my knees on my bed and said, I don't know how to have a godly marriage. Like, we've got this high standard for marriage, and it disgusts me that everybody looks at my marriage and we're great. And there's not. And that's like the comparison, but it's not what the Bible says. I don't have that kind of a marriage, and God give it to me. And I just pulled my head out and found somebody that's all they do. And I spent time and money, and we just met with somebody to understand marriage. And you know what I found out? We don't know anything about marriage.
No, we don't.
We're adults, but that doesn't mean we know marriage, but somebody does.
Right.
And because culture says that you're weak or that you have problems before you can go seek out help for marriage, is just crazy. Because if your marriage isn't great, everything else falls, right?
You're right.
I mean, as a professional, what happens? So as a professional, you get completely focused on a career, and you build all this wealth. Let's say you're actually successful. Your marriage fails. It splits the wealth in half.
Yeah.
then your kids are screwed. I mean, it's just, so the things that matter most, our culture says you're weak if you go get help in.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the concept that even if you stay married and you don't lose half of what you've accumulated, when you've got a marriage that is struggling and difficult, I mean, it pours over into all areas of your life. You're just not peaceful, you're not joyful. That transitions into, I mean, we all have worked with individuals where their marriage is going south, and that they're not engaged, they can't perform. And so you're absolutely right, you shouldn't have to wait until you're in crisis mode before you reach out and get that help.
Yeah. So on the topic of marriage, you've been married for a year, times 30.
Yeah.
But man, what are some things that have made those valleys worth it? And what are some things that you've done right?
I guess I'll start that off by saying that, my dad has always been my hero. And it's not like I've got this amazingly successful, rich father, but I have a father that's been married to my mom, who's blind, for more than 50 years. He always provided for his family, and I always knew I was loved. And so when I look at success, that's how I categorize success most of the time. I mean, when I want to get fleshly, I start thinking what's been accumulated and what's in the bank account and all that kind of stuff. And will it be enough? I don't say that to make it sound like I don't think about those things. I don't worry about those things like I shouldn't. But my dad and my parents have been married for 50 plus years, and I just always see that as success. So trying to replicate that in some way. I mean, obviously my wife and I are different than my mom and my dad in many different ways, but I think one of the things I've mentioned to my wife several times is our kids have gotten older. So we've got a 25, 23, and 21-year-old. And, one of the things I've mentioned to her is I feel like we've always been consistent and with the way we act. And what I mean by that is we're consistent inside the home. We act inside the home the way we are outside the home. So in other words, we don't show up at church with these plastered on smiles and, real nice to everyone and sweet, and then get home and yell at each other and yell at our kids and, just aren't good parents or good husband and wife. I think we've always been consistent internally as we've been externally. And we tend to be pretty transparent. I mean, if we're tired and grumpy, we kind of show that we're tired and grumpy, and I mean, not complaining, but just like, well, how you doing? Well, I kind of stink today. I don't feel good. I'm not feeling well or I'm upset, or, things just aren't going my way. As opposed, I hate the concept in America where we just walk around saying, how are you? And everyone goes, I'm fine. I mean, try sometime to go, no, I'm not fine. Life sucks. And see if the person that asks you stops to listen, But we've been pretty consistent with who we are as people. And, one of the things that I laugh about is when we got married, we kind of had the conversation where it's like, we're in this for the long haul. Divorce is not an option. And so that seems really great, but there's been times in our marriage where we're just kind of having a knockdown drag out. And I say, what are you going to do? You're not leaving. I'm not leaving. And that could come across as being almost, very demanding or commanding. And it's not done that way. It's just like, okay, what are we going to do? Because we just need to figure this out. And obviously none of that's to say that we've got a perfect marriage. I mean, there's things we argue about, and we've argued about for 30 years. And it just, they'll still come up. And she knows how to push my buttons, and I know how to push hers, but it works. And I wouldn't trade my wife for the world. And if I had to do it all over again, I'd say yes in a heartbeat. But just trying to be a good dad, trying to be a good husband, and raise 3 kids that are good, outstanding, good citizens, love Jesus, are nice to other people, and can find their own way in this world. That's kind of where we're at right now, is watching our kids find their own way. And I've been saying there's there's a fine line between support and enabling, because we really want to enable our kids. And sometimes we got to step back and go, I can't, you got to learn your own way this time.
So a little bit of a shift on that. One of the things I think you said that's so powerful, and I haven't heard anybody else say it, was authenticity. Is we go back to culture, but it almost demands at times that we care what other people think, and we put a mask on of who we really are. And as a parent, your kids know when you're authentic. First of all, you can't fool them. But really, it's not going to be the devotional that changes their life, that shows them Jesus. It's going to be the way that you act consistently, like you said. So kind of in that frame, you have over 100 employees. What you do is seen in your home and in the workplace. What is something that is very important to you to be able to share or be transparent about that authenticity and to set a culture with the people that you have influence over?
Well, for me, it's about relationships. It's about people. And I know that sounds somewhat of a cliche, but that's part of what I'm working through as a professional as well. We're all gifted with many different talents and many different things. And this journey started for me maybe 5 to 10 years ago when we did some of the Strength Finder assessments. And I sat down with my partners, and at the time there was only about 5 of us, maybe 6. And my biggest fight is I fight the comparability demon every day. So I'm fine with who I am, but when I start to compare myself to other people, that's where I really start to lose it. And so I started comparing where my strengths were to my partner's strengths. And my partners had these amazing CPA type strengths like strategy or strategic and achiever and maximizer and ideate. I don't even know what ideation is, but it sounds really great. And I mean, my strengths were harmony and restorative and includer and responsibility and consistency. And I was like, am I in the wrong profession or what? But it takes a group of people to be partners in a firm like ours. And at that point, I started kind of learning, who I am and where my strengths are. And I'm not going to lie, it's still a struggle especially when you're talking about performance-based metrics that deal with things like how efficient you're performing for your clients and things like that. When I would rather get to know my clients, I'd rather get to know them as individuals and spend time with them. And that extends to people in the office as well. I mean, I'm kind of known as the guy who brings everybody together. I mean, my strength is harmony. And I can feel when things are not harmonistic. I don't know what to do about it, but I can feel it and I can vocalize it. But in our office, I mean, I'm kind of the guy that people know, is authentic, is not trying to show off and be, with false pretenses. And that's not to say that my other partners do. It's just, I'm just a little bit more authentic, I think, than others. And I try to use that to build relationships. I mean, when you have turnover, how expensive turnover can be. And I remember years and years ago, I did something at a firm event. And because usually I'm kind of the one that gets up and MCs or speaks and things like that. And one of my partners said, man, that was $100,000 speech. And I said, what do you mean? And he goes, that's the kind of speech that's going to keep someone here at CCK. And so when there's times when I get discouraged and go, how strategic and how valuable is it to be harmonistic? Well, it could be $100,000 worth if you're holding someone in to the firm as opposed to them leaving and then having to replace them and retrain them and everything. So that's kind of who I am in the firm. And again, the strange thing is I need to understand that more. I need to be more accepting of that. And as I head into this later season of my career, let's say, understanding that and really grabbing that and doing something with it and doing with it what God wants me to do. I have no doubt. I have no question. I am where I'm supposed to be because of things he did 20 some years ago. I know that beyond a shadow of a doubt, but it's weird because just like I made that change 23 years ago, there's things brewing internally now that I feel like I have to learn so that God can continue to use me going forward in this profession.
No, that's beautiful. And I think it's so powerful too, is, as professionals, if you're performance based, and I think men and women, but a lot of men are, it's so easy for us to make it a win or a loss on how we did that day or that week or that month. But one of the dangers is we don't have a lot of time. I know for counseling for me too recently, just kind of identifying that performance issue, and how it's manifest, and what the attack looks like. It's helped me realize I don't spend enough time truly knowing how God created Kellen, because I'm on to the next performance. And if I don't know the gifts and talents he specifically gave me, they may shine out and other people can see them, but I don't know. I feel like I almost don't know them as well as the people around me sometimes, right? Because I'm too busy performing. How do I give somebody else clarity? You talk about the second half of life. How do I pour into somebody else if I don't know the inner workings of the gifts and talents I have? And I'll say this too, Jeff, that was really powerful. We had the same conversation last week, a professional I did over lunch. We are beautifully and wonderfully created, perfect as we are, with our path and our gifts and talents from our Creator. And what we fall prey to in this world is looking at other broken people, because we're all broken, and caring about what they think about.
Absolutely.
And if we perform based on what they think about, we're calling God a liar. And that's a dangerous path to walk.
Yeah, we actually kind of mentioned that in the session I had yesterday where, and I'm probably going to butcher this, but it was just the concept of basically telling God that he doesn't understand. I can't go to him and go, Lord, you don't understand. I'm dealing with this. I'm dealing with that. I have to, I'm comparing to this or whatever. I mean, he came to this earth as man so that he could endure the things that we endure and understand who we are. But when I tell him that, your word says that you created me perfectly, and you know me, and you care about me, and you dance over me. And then I say something like, but how can you? I mean, I'm questioning him. And basically then that puts into question everything else that he has done. I mean, in essence, it questions the cross. I mean, if you want to boil it down, and when you start these thoughts and these conversations, you're like, well, no, I wouldn't question the cross. But when you start to walk down that road and you start to put the pieces of the puzzle together, you can easily go from one end of the spectrum to the other. Then you end up going, man, what, I believe this in my head. Do I really believe it in my heart? And I think that's a huge question to ask. And when you go through a journey like this, or like any of us are experiencing, it kind of questions a lot of things, and it ends up with having to have a heart to heart with your Father, for sure.
Well, and one more question. I'm going to ask you another one of those that's just on the fly and deep. So it's be really, really hard to answer, but I want to give you the opportunity to already share testimony in the season you're in. As a professional, performance-driven, successful, from the outside world, successful family, raised 3 great kids, right? And you're standing there going, how did I end up in this valley? What have you learned, and what would you tell someone else right now with what you've already learned?
It's okay to not be okay. I think we've heard that phrase a lot in the last couple of years, but it's true. Your relationships with other people are invaluable. And by other people, I mean people that'll speak truth to you, not yes men, not yes ladies, and not people that are using you for something, but people that'll walk through a valley with you. I mean, you're one of those guys, Kellen. You know how to do that. You do that with tons of people. And to have people around you that support you and I know I get in trouble for this all the time at home. my wife and I, she'll complain about things and I want to fix them. And she says, sometimes I just need you to listen and shake your head. And there's a lot to be said for people that'll walk with you and go, and not give you the churchy answer. Oh, God's got this. I know that, but I don't need to hear that right now. I just need to hear that you understand that I'm not alone, that I'm not crazy, but that, and it's extra bonus. It's gravy if the person I'm talking to and having a heart to heart with goes, yeah, I know, I'm in the same place. I mean, we had that conversation 2 or 3 weeks ago, Calvin, and I was going, dude, we're way closer in some of the things we're enduring than we think. But to have those people that will love you and to walk that journey with you is just invaluable. But again, the longer you are walking, and maybe this is what someone needs to hear today, the longer you're walking and you are struggling and you think you got it all under control, you really don't. And it's okay. It's okay to not be okay. And it's okay to reach out to somebody and just have a conversation.
Absolutely. It's okay not to be okay. The thing that I've learned that I'd add to it is just because you're not okay doesn't mean God will stop using you.
Absolutely. Or that he's forgotten you. Or, I mean, there's days when I wake up and I'm just like, God, I need to hear or see you today. Open my eyes, open my ears, and that doesn't mean you have to do something for me. I'm not asking. I just want to know that you're there. Because, I go back to this example of, I remember this one time I was getting the gas at the dentist's office and they had said something, well, let us know if you have too much. I'm like, well, how do I know if I have too much? They said, well, you'll be loopy. So I started wigging out. Well, how am I going to know if I'm loopy? So I'm laying there, you're somewhat kind of inverted a little bit. You got these glasses on and I had my eyes closed. I'm letting the stuff kind of take effect. I'm like, how am I going to know? How am I going to know? What if they're not here? What if how am I going to get a hold of someone? And I just kind of slightly opened my left eye and I could see the tech sitting right there. And I went, okay, just sit back and enjoy this ride, the gas. But that's the way it is with our Father. We get so wigged out and think he's off doing other stuff, and he's there, and he'll chime in when he needs to, when the timing is right. And I think that's the other thing that I'm learning is, he will reach out and he will show himself when he really needs to. And boy, when he does that, sometimes you completely miss it. You completely miss it, even though you're looking for it. And boy, when that hits and you realize that you asked God for something this morning and he delivered, it's extremely humbling.
That's amazing. And you're absolutely right. So Jeff, I usually wrap all this up with, hey, how's somebody get a hold of you? But I posture this for the meat of what we've talked about today. Somebody listens to this and they just don't know how to take a next step, or they're just not okay, and they need somebody to talk to. What's an email or kind of the best way for them to share that with you or I?
Yeah, I mean, email me, Jeff at cckcpa.com. I'm always open to help people. You're the same way. It's hilarious because if you were to walk in, let me put it this way, if you were to walk up to me in a professional business mixer / networking event, I'll come off as being somewhat standoffish because I'm very shy. I'm very introverted at my core. But somehow God has given me the ability to speak publicly and actually do it halfway decently and enjoy it. And you were talking about that earlier. And that's one thing I've done for 30 years. Like, I don't want to sound like a CPA. I don't want to be your typical CPA. I want to be engaging. I want to be entertaining and have those kind of conversations with people. But, you come up, give me 5 minutes, give me 2 minutes, and I'll be your best friend. I mean, I'll go deep too. I mean, I'm not afraid to be transparent. I'm not afraid to be authentic. That's just kind of who I am. But it's funny because if you run into me just completely off the cuff in certain situations, I may I may look like I don't care, but it's just, I'm just quiet. I'm just introverted. But someone calls me and says, "Hey, I heard you speak, and here's what I'm struggling with." I'm going to be just like Kellen Cowan. I'm going to drop stuff. It's like, let's talk. Let me help. So.
Yeah, I think that ties back into the most powerful thing somebody can tell you when you take the time to ask them how they're doing, if they really want to get your attention, is to be honest.
Yeah.
You're either okay or you're not. And just for everybody listening, start being honest and watch your world change, because there is community out there. So everybody, thank you. This is Kellen Cowan. I'm one of the owners of New Wave Solutions. Jeff Frable, thank you for giving today, brother.
You're welcome, my friend. You're always welcome.